Imagine you are sitting in seat 26A. You are 10 minutes into a flight from Portland to Ontario. You have your seatbelt on. You are looking at your phone, and then the wall disappears. Not a window crack. The entire wall of the airplane rips open at 16,000 feet. The pressure difference sucks the shirt off a teenage boy. It rips the headrests off the seats. If you had been unbuckled, you would be dead. On January 5th, 2024, a door plug blew off a brand new Boeing 737 MAX 9. The bolts weren't broken. They weren't faulty. They were missing. The plane left the factory without the bolts. For 80 years, the word Boeing meant safety. Pilots had a saying, if it's not Boeing, I'm not going. They built the B-17 that won World War II. They built the 747 that shrank the world. They were an engineering monarchy. But today, Boeing is a crime scene. This is not a story about a broken door. This is a story about a specific type of cancer that kills American companies. It is a story about what happens when you let accountants run a factory. We are going to open the black box. We are going to look at the merger that poisoned the blood, the $43 billion robbery, and the dead whistleblowers who try to stop it. Welcome to the suicide of an empire. To understand the murder, you have to understand the victim. Before 1997, Boeing was not a business. It was an association of engineers who happened to sell planes. The headquarters was in Seattle, right next to the factory. The CEO was always an engineer. The culture was simple: product first, money second. In the 1960s, they bet the entire company on the 747. If it failed, Boeing would go bankrupt. The bankers screamed. The accountants panicked. But the engineers said, we can build it. And they did. The 747 didn't just make money. It conquered the sky. It gave Boeing a monopoly for 30 years. They were arrogant. They were tough. But they were perfect. Because when you are hurling metal tubes through the air at 600 miles per hour, good enough is not a strategy. Good enough is a death sentence. But in the 1990s, a new enemy appeared. Not a rival company. A rival philosophy. The year is 1997. Boeing buys its rival, McDonnell Douglas. On paper, it looked like a victory. Boeing was the conqueror, but in reality, it was a reverse takeover. McDonnell Douglas was failing. Their planes were old. Their culture was rotten. They were run by finance guys who cut corners to boost the stock price. And when the merger happened, the finance guys didn't leave. They took over. Meet Harry Stonecipher, the CEO of McDonnell Douglas. Harry became the president of the new Boeing. And Harry had a philosophy. He famously said, when people say I changed the culture of Boeing, that was the intent, so that it's run like a business rather than a great engineering firm. Let that sink in. He looked at the greatest engineering firm in human history and said, that's the problem. He wanted to run it like a business. And what does a business do in the modern era? It doesn't build. It extracts. The first thing they did was symbolic. They moved the headquarters. They left Seattle where the engineers and the factories were and moved the executives to a skyscraper in Chicago. Why Chicago? Because it was neutral ground? No, because they wanted to get the executives away from the engineers. They didn't want to hear about safety margins or manufacturing delays. They wanted to hear about profit margins and stock buybacks. The brain severed itself from the hands, and the rot began. This is exactly why this channel exists, to expose the difference between building an asset and looting one. If you want to learn the rules of the new economy, subscribe to the Scale Foundry right now. We are building the industrial truth. Now, we get to the crime. From 2013 to 2019, Boeing was making record profits. They had a choice. Option A, invest that money into a new plane to replace the aging 737. Option B, give that money to the shareholders to pump the stock price. They chose option B. Between 2013 and 2019, Boeing spent $43 billion buying back its own stock. Do you know what it costs to develop a brand new clean sheet airplane? About $15 billion. They could have built 3 revolutionary new airplanes. They could have secured their dominance for the next 50 years. Instead, they burned the furniture to heat the house. They artificially pumped the stock price to make the executives rich while the factories starved. They outsourced everything. They fired the senior engineers because they were too expensive. They hired contractors for $9 an hour to write code for flight software. They turned Boeing into an assembly plant for parts made by the lowest bidder. And then Airbus made a move. In 2010, Airbus launched the A320neo. It was fuel efficient. It was quiet, and airlines loved it. American Airlines, an exclusive Boeing customer, called Boeing and said, we are buying Airbus. Panic in Chicago. Boeing needed a new plane now. But remember, they had spent all their money on stock buybacks. They didn't have the time or the cash to build a new plane, so they decided to hack an old one. The 737 was designed in the 1960s. It sits very low to the ground. To make it fuel efficient, they needed massive new engines. But the engines didn't fit under the wing. So the engineers said, we can't do this. The accountants said, make it fit. So they moved the engines forward and up. This changed the center of gravity. If the pilots flew the plane too steeply, the nose would pitch up and the plane would stall and fall out of the sky. The plane was fundamentally unstable. To fix this hardware problem, they used a software patch. They called it MCOS. If the plane's nose went up too high, MCOS would automatically force the nose down. It was a robot hand that grabbed the controls from the pilot. But here is the crime. They didn't tell the pilots. If they told the pilots about MCOS, the FAA would require simulator training. That costs money. That takes time. Boeing promised the airlines no new training required, so they hit MCOS. They removed it from the manuals. They let pilots fly a plane with a secret robot inside it. October 2018, Lion Air Flight 610. A faulty sensor tells MCOS the plane is stalling. It wasn't. MCOS kicks in. It slams the nose down. The pilots fight back. They pull up. MCOS pushes down. They pull up. MCOS pushes down. For 12 minutes, they wrestled with a ghost they didn't know existed. They lost. 189 people died. Boeing blamed the pilots. They said, foreign pilots don't know how to fly. They kept the planes in the air. 5 months later, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302. Same problem, same struggle, same result. 157 people died. 346 lives sacrificed on the altar of the stock price. This is a story that corporate media tries to soften. We don't. If you believe this truth needs to be heard by more people, hit the like button. It signals the algorithm to stop suppressing the evidence. You might think, surely someone inside Boeing tried to stop this? They did. John Barnett, a quality manager at the South Carolina factory, he found metal shavings in the wiring bundles which could cause a fire. He found oxygen masks that didn't work. He found workers fitting substandard parts just to meet the quota. He reported it to management. They ignored him. He reported it to the FAA. Boeing harassed him. They gaslit him. They destroyed his career. In March 2024, in the middle of his deposition against Boeing, John Barnett was found dead in his truck with a gunshot wound to the head. Police ruled it a suicide, but his family said, "He told us, if anything happens to me, it wasn't suicide." The Alaska Airlines door plug in 2024 was not an accident. It was the inevitable result of a system that removed the safety net to save weight. They fired the inspectors. They sped up the line. They treated skilled labor like a disposable cost. And now, the American icon is a national embarrassment. There is an ancient warning in the book of Proverbs. Bread of deceit is sweet to a man, but afterwards his mouth shall be filled with gravel. For 10 years, the stock buybacks were the bread of deceit. They tasted sweet. The executives got rich. The shareholders applauded. But today, their mouths are filled with gravel. The planes are falling apart. The stock is crashing. The reputation is gone. So what is your verdict? Is Boeing too big to fail? Or should we let them eat the gravel and go bankrupt? Tell me what you think in the comments below. What is the lesson of Boeing? It is a warning to every business owner, every investor, and every employee. Financial engineering is not engineering. You cannot cut your way to greatness. You cannot buy back your way to quality. When you let the money guys run the product house, you might get rich for a quarter. You might get rich for a decade. But eventually, the door blows off. Eventually, physics collects the debt. Boeing forgot that they don't sell stock. They sell gravity defiance. And gravity is undefeated. If you want to understand how deep the rot goes in corporate America, you have to look at the other titan that lost its way. Intel. They used to own the future. Now they are begging the government for a bailout. I broke down exactly how Intel allowed Nvidia to steal the crown in this video right here. It is the perfect prequel to the Boeing disaster.